Yeah.
I think that is all our feelings.
Speakeasy 2015! Yes! Alright, we're going to bring up our first reader. I think, right? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I think that's a thing that should happen.
Yeah.
Only gonna get it in me, gonna get it in you, gonna feel it in you, gonna get it in you.
Alright, our first reader is Sam Corfman, and for his bio, we're going to play 2 Truths and a Lie. Ooh! Can y'all hear me? Alright, 2 truths and a lie. One of them's a lie. 1. Sam once got caught taking a math test for his twin brother. 2. In Brooklyn, Sam once ran into Kaylin in the subway. A street performer BuzzFeed calls, quote, literally the worst street performer in the whole world. And then he participated in his, quote, non-narrative, nihilist, anarchist puppet show about literary theory, and Sam thought it was actually pretty cool. Number 3, he has been tear gas. Alright, I think we should take a poll. Who thinks number 1 is the lie? Alright, number 2. Number 3. Who doesn't make his votes for number 1? Let's bring Sam up here. Maybe he'll tell us. Sam, come on. Thank you.
So when they asked us for walk-up songs, I remembered when I was like a competitive swimmer, and if you swam really well in prelims and you were seated first for like a championship heat, you got to pick the song that played behind you when you came out. So I always think about that, and so this time around I gave them 3 songs that I was like, if I had ever been good enough as a swimmer to be seated first, and to come out like in the like seated heat where I was going to be the person that was expected to win, like these are the songs as a college kid that I would have wanted to play behind me. So that's what that was. Okay. So poems.
Which one's the lie?
I never took a math test for my brother because I would never have been caught dead being anywhere near, like, associated with my brother at that phase of my life. And maybe would do it now, but who knows. Yeah, but the nihilist literary theory, like, trash performance was pretty cool. So I'm going to read a poem that is so new that it doesn't have a title. I wrote it yesterday. Not particularly for this, but I wrote it and then I decided because I had read it, I should read it. Or because I wrote it, I should read it. So it's not titled, but for the sake of having a title for today, we'll call it Trading Enthalpy. Sure. The cores of some planets, roiling, contained waves. Others, icicles. Welded to my skin, the small slivers of world in which takeover is the only kind of conversation. I loved you, I was invaded, I loved you. Hijacked, rewired, I'm a factory, carcinogenic. There's always another child. How liquids swell, how you turned me into liquid. I'll trade enthalpy with solids and we'll all be in between states. 3 months, they said, and it's been longer, but you've still seen to it. No one taught us to be polite, but I learned, and you left me facing 2 to 4 years, or the knife, or the Arctic, where the cold replaces planets with marks all its own. Okay. And so, if any of you were here at Speakeasy last semester, I read a lot of poems about art. And I recently had a weird thing that happened where I started writing poems that were letters to someone, a combination of someone's, an unknown someone. And so before I read a couple of those letter poems, I'm going to read something that Elaine Sixou wrote, sort of impersonating Kafka. Franz Kafka had this weird letter relationship with one of his translators, in which he talks, he's like all lovelorn, but they never saw each other except like twice for 24 hours. And so she wrote this like weird letter thing in the mode of Kafka that we can think of like maybe as an epigraph to letters in general. So it's called Kafka's Complaints Selected. You write to me that I don't write to you, Milena, that my letters, I am quoting you, are really my letters, that my letters, which I believe I am writing to Milena, you write to me, are really written to myself, that it is myself I have in mind while in appearance writing to you, addressing myself to my internal inhabitant, the one in the room next to my heart, under cover of addressing myself to you, that sometimes you would like to send me my letters, send them back to me, but something stops you, the wish to keep letters from me, and even to steal them, to eat them, to copy them out, to receive them. And then, just a little other part. Imagine too that a letter is nothing, just as it is everything. Nothing but a facsimile. If you do not read it, it will have been born to die on the spot. Yes, Milena, I do not, I admit, write you letters. I send you the coals and the remains of my combustion. That's some food for thought on top of poems. So the first letter poem, I titled these all based on like who they're addressed to, so the address and the title for these are all the same. And the first one was inspired by a poem by our very own, and by our very own I mean Pittsburgh MFA program's very own Kelly Andrews, who alas has a real person job and is not here tonight. So my matchstick. My matchstick. Autumn but cold. When you're alone, write to me. Rip out the pages you're turning, annotate them, and fold your isolating thoughts into a paper airplane addressed to my volcano. Speak your confinement and send it external, bright brass honks ringing from the inside out. Perhaps fold those into your letter, so that when I open it, I will hear your throated music. If you want to burn, remove any metal, or the heat will brand you before the flame has time to catch. Remember when you came to me and teared against my chest, a pieta? How we led our own cult, commissioned paintings just so we could take them to the piazza and start a bonfire of the vanities. How I set you in your skiff adrift in the wake and the waves of a warming air. Soon you'll be a ghost. Play it up. Use your spectral bodies, your ashes that blow in wind, but scatter only when you want them to. Go to your past lovers and blow into eyes, hair, ears. Start spot fires and melt the barriers to dreams. Bring their houses down while they sleep and leave burns on their skin where only new lovers will find them. Then find me. Your dry leaves and twigs. S. And so this next one is addressed to my faraway footnote. And it's kind of, so it uses, inspired a little bit by this quote by Robert Kelly, in which dreams themselves are footnotes, but not footnotes to life. Some other transactions, they are so busy annotating all night long. And also a little bit by, if you've ever been down Fifth, a little bit west of the cathedral, the public health building has this weird, like, sculpture of a man kind of like coming out of the wall. Like also there's these triangles all around him. It's apparently called Man. It's by a sculptor. The sculptor's name is Virgil Cantini, and so there's a little bit of that happening in this too. My faraway footnote. I'm tired of sleeping, of spending time out of it when I could be in. Slipknots close around my vocal cords and wrists, but my brain's too wide open. I vibrate. Anyone can tune in and read my mind. Any tree. The concrete too can infiltrate, can try me on as skin. A hardening. What would hair be like if it was grass? We call the part in our heads roots anyway and say it grows. I could take wheels for shoes and slide up hills, fall apart and spin in place. I'd never reach and cross that field, now that it's someone's hair. The marrow becomes sheathed in metal, painted and bent for sitting. My eye blinks, recurs, going and stopping and starting. When you come to visit, see the geometric man breaking out of geodes, having nowhere to go. That's me, aimless in the heat, up among the emptied air. And so the next two are still letters, but they're also, on top of being letters, erasure poems or selections. So the words are all from a book of poems called Harm by Hilary Gravendike, who was my friend and who passed away this past year. And so the first one is made up of words that show up in the foreword to the book, which is by Brenda Hillman. It's a lot of things. Basically the words come from somewhere else. But they've been repackaged for me, or by me, for me. By me and for me. So this one is called Forward Creature. Forward creature, you have been shaped on sand between opposites. nature or the root meaning. After surgery, a cleanly and delicately punctuated tradition, the consciousness contiguous to interiors. Trade vocabularies by turns disoriented. Style the char in the future. Suggest the weave and the waiting, the perceptions. Toward a snagged and torqued horizon between the spine. Even a fabric error, glowing. Cast into music. The memory of humming as anesthesia. Illuminated breath in and out of the hill. And the last poem I'm going to read is also an erasure poem from that book, but it's a very broad, just like it's from the whole book, no single poem, it's just all the way through. And it's called Creature of Leaves. Creature of leaves, I'm eyes down to bark in the softest cage skin. My anxiety a feather, my shoulder a secret packed with nettles and appetites. Hands offering a charred lock, a charred sun, a grief buried above, lung-studded humming. I was the wing grafting an other to some other awe. I woke a landscape. I closed another. From the first prison, Samuel. That's all I got. Thanks, guys.
So our next reader is Nina Sabak. And here are a few fun facts about Nina. Within the last month, she's had short stories published in The Rumpus and Barley Snopes, which is awesome. She is surprisingly bad at Scrabble. And a few books her relatives have given her in the last 6 months include Crafting with Cat Hair and Raising Unicorns. It's totally possible that both relatives were serious. Either these were jokes or her family, though supportive, dramatically misunderstands the gay agenda. To date, she has neither crafted with cat hair nor raised a unicorn. Please welcome
So if you were here for the last time I read, you may remember that I read about a middle schooler with feelings, but I'm branching out tonight. This is a female middle schooler with feelings. This is language arts for the gifted child. There is something in you too dark to name, like swallowing bees. You are 11 going on 12, and the whole world has shifted by halves. Your skin knees are bloodied and wild, your skin greasy, hips sore. This, your mother tells you, is growing up. The whole world has been in on the ruse. Your entire childhood you thought maybe you would never change. Right now a sibling would come in handy, a brother even. Someone older, a survivor to interrogate, a precedent setter. I'll tell you when you're older is beginning to sound like a threat. God save 11-year-old girls. You are too old to wrestle your best friend anymore now that he can throw you, too old also to plead for a new Barbie house, too young to know what else to ask for. You set your stuffed animals aside. Teenagers sleep alone. Then you pile them back on the bedspread in the middle of the night thinking, this is too lonely. The girl who sits in front of you in class has cut off her hair. This happens at a sleepover you weren't invited to. The story is that Cassie did it herself after the pizza in the first movie and everyone crowded into the bathroom to watch. You can't blame them. When you see Cassie's bare neck on Monday, your heart beats double time. Matthew Burney walks down your row during language arts when everyone is supposed to be reading silently from the textbook, and he leans in over Cassie's shoulder and whispers "dyke" so loudly that everyone but the teacher can hear it. That night you consider asking your mother what a dyke is. You were sitting at the kitchen island watching her cut sweet potatoes into strips, and the air is comfortable and buzzy with possibility. Your mother would probably know, but it's a bad word, you've guessed that much. So instead you excuse yourself and slip out to the hallway where your parents keep the dictionary. Here's what the dictionary tells you. An embankment constructed to prevent flooding, keep out the sea, etc. You wonder how Cassie could ever do that. Your best friend is a boy named Lex. You've known each other since always, and every Halloween you coordinate your costumes. This year you're Han Solo and Princess Leia. Last year you were Thing 1 and Thing 2. Everyone comes to school dressed up for costume day. As Princess Leia, you wear a white robe and boots. The robe billows a little bit whenever you walk down the hallway and you feel vast and important. This lasts until 6th period history, when you encounter another Leia and see her costume, which is hand-sewn and doesn't look cheap at all. Her hair is long enough to do the buns for real. You had to wear a wig. Your scalp sweats underneath it. I like your boots, you say, aiming desperately to please. Thanks, she says, and turns away. Everyone is watching. Lex pushes you into a pile of leaves on the way home, and you hit him in the shoulder as hard as you can, but he doesn't even flinch. Your knuckles are sore for days. Someone needs to teach you how to throw a punch. Cassie comes to school with pink hair on the day that choir parts are handed out. When your father picks you up from practice afterwards, he drives past her and says, "Where are that girl's parents?" The Christmas concert is just over a month away. The 6th grade choir always performs for the whole school, which is only 2 grades, but still. Parents are welcome. Parents take this very seriously. In your backpack, you have printouts of Up on the Housetop, Silver Bells, and Jingle Bell Rock. The PTA is mad that there aren't any songs about Jesus. Your dad is part of the PTA, so he's mad too, and he tells you about it on the drive home. Up on the Housetop, he says, "Isn't even good music." The gossip at school is that Cassie dyed her hair with Kool-Aid and conditioner. Her best friend Becky helped. Becky's limp blonde hair has a blue streak in it now, so this is probably true. Then again, the gossip at school is that you and Lex are a couple, so who knows? You have matching costumes, a girl in gym class points out later that week. It's the basketball unit, and you're practicing chest passes in groups of 4. "Oh, you so have a thing for him," one of the other girls says. This makes you laugh, but you catch yourself. They want you to say yes. You don't know what they do with no. No comment, you say, and pass her a little harder than is strictly necessary. For the record, you don't like Up on the Housetop either, but you would never tell your father that now. Right before Thanksgiving, the other Leia switches into your choir section. She has a good voice and takes private lessons. You hate her. By this point, Cassie's hair has grown out a little and the dye is washed out. The curl is starting to come back in. She is in choir too, a soloist like Princess Leia. Next to those long braids, Cassie looks sort of like a boy. The latest gossip is that Matthew Burney is going out with Leia, whose name is actually Amy. They sit together at lunch and hold hands. In language arts, everyone has to write a poem for a writing contest, and Matthew does his about Amy. You and Lex agree that this is total barf. Your mother leaves notes inside your backpack for you to find. Your father picks you up from choir practice without complaining once. This could be so much worse. Even when you decide to steal your mother's razor to shave your legs one afternoon and end up stripping a whole ugly streak down your calf, even when she finds you in the bathroom putting on the 7th of 10 Band-Aids, even then, remember, it could be so much worse. On the day of the Christmas concert, you put on your nice green dress and thick white tights and tie your hair back with a sparkly scrunchie. The scrunchie was in your Christmas stocking last year, and it's lucky. When the announcement comes over the PA for all choir members to report to the auditorium, you follow Amy and Cassie out of math class. They don't see you. They're too busy ignoring each other. You are happy and invisible. Your shoes are silent on the buffed tile floor. Lex is waiting down the hall and you wave, but he doesn't see you either. He's watching for Cassie. She goes to him and she slips her hand inside his hand, and they walk like that the whole way to the auditorium's double doors. They are talking about something, laughing, and of course this is how it is. Of course, of course, of course. "Where are my sopranos?" the choir director says from the stage. "Sopranos over here, altos line up by the wall." A few parents are already here, though not yours. A few siblings too. Right now, a sibling would come in handy, someone younger, someone to make whatever you're feeling into a lesson to teach later. There is some confusion in the alto section, and the choir director has to climb down from the stage and use her outside voice. You take the moment to sneak a look at Cassie, 3 down from you on the right and 1 row ahead. Someone has bobby pinned the stray hair away from her face. She has a neck like a swan and freckles on her shoulders. She is mouthing the words to her solo. Then you look back to the loose crowd of boys waiting to be organized, and Matthew Barney catches your attention, holds up 2 fingers in a V in front of his face, and flicks out his tongue. Your face burns. You don't understand, but you do. The definition you found all those weeks ago was incomplete. How can you say something is meant to keep out the sea without ever explaining what the sea is? Okay, gentlemen, pull it together, the choir director says. Only Lex is listening. This time next year, he will be someone neither of you knows. Excuse me, you say, and you start pushing your way down the row. Cassie isn't facing the right way and doesn't notice you coming. Have you ever even spoken before? Up close, you can see all the flyaways over her temples and ears, and she smells like cinnamon. Hi, you say. What? She says, turning. Oh, hi. You're supposed to say something else here, but you instead stare at her freckled shoulder and mumble, I sit behind you in homeroom. I know, she says. You're Sarah, right? The choir director is shuffling her music, and soon she'll turn to you all and begin the warm-ups and scales. There is barely any time. I just wanted to tell you good luck for your solo, you say. Cassie's face is hard to read. Thanks, she says, and that's all. Now you'll return to your row and wait for everything to begin. But as you turn, there is a hand on your arm, a warm hand, with nails painted pink and glittery. She must have done the manicure herself because the polish spills over onto the skin of her fingers. Cassie says, you too. You will remember this. You are 11 going on 12, and your heart is wild in its bloodied mess, and you climb the bleachers back up to your spot and scan the crowd. Your parents have come and are standing by the entrance, searching for seats. They are so small in their winter coats. It's so loud, but you think you can hear your father's voice. You think you could hear it anywhere. When they look up, you'll wave. When they see you. Now they'll see you. Now they'll see you. Now. Thank you.
Lights always turn off on the third reader, so I was trying to mess around with it. Yeah, refresh it or something. Well, our third reader, who may or may not have the lights turned off on her, is Kim Grabowski. She is a horsewoman, a tattoo collector, or corrector, up to, and ex-barista. She's a proud mama of a very odd little pit bull who recently developed an intense fear of shadows. Shadows is in all caps, so I felt like jazz hands were necessary. And if you didn't know, I'm here to tell you that you really can't see to the other side of the Great Lakes. So Kim has some other facts here that are very interesting, but I think the most important one to know about her is that she does this thing with her face where she says, oh no! And she looks exactly like a cat, and hopefully she'll demonstrate before her reading tonight so that she can share her amazing videos. Or not, she's shaking her head. So maybe it'll just be a mystery, and you'll have to know that she's really good at the oh no face. But either way, here she is.
I guess that's as good a thing as any to be famous for. I think there's a mouth cover involved. I have to be like, oh no.
See, do it better. You're so good. Okay.
What the bees have taught me. I dream of a single bee flying toward me aggressively in his cold fear of autumn. In the dream, I cannot bear to destroy him. I am acutely aware of the big way the bees are dying. My supermarket marks produce bins with no bees, no, and the label written in chalk. The same sign in a multitude of places. What we could lose is that interchangeable. I saw a perfectly timed photo of a bee moments after stinging a human arm. The stinger slightly visible and a thin line that seemed made of light connecting bee to person. The way pain can only unite us for a split second before it's unbearable. I wonder about ancient femaleness, the secret buried somewhere deep inside the hive. I have tried to pin it down for so long, followed the bees from flower to flower and then back to origin. I have wanted honey and brushed pollen. What it means to truly be alone, luxuriate instead of fly, and does she keep or is she kept? Where in the spectrum of human femininity has the queen staked her claim? She is bright light at the center, the possibility of everything, the movement of nothing. Now I am a suspicious character. I have wanted the guarded too obviously. Humans, like bees, will die suddenly to keep the answers hidden. So I read that in Yona's workshop last semester and heavily revised it, so I felt like I should read it because I don't want to do the thing where I just read all of the poems that anybody who's a poet at Pitt will have to see 100 million times. So also on that note, I brought a couple poems from Katie Ford's Blood Lyrics, which I read over winter break and really, really loved. So it's like, I can't get away from writing those poems just about being a woman and, you know, blood and guts and stuff. So, but this is a great book. I shouldn't reduce it to that. It's really interesting how she weaves kind of like motherhood and war and embodiment and all that. So I'm going to read one. It's about snow at night, so it's really appropriate. And then another one, and then the title poem that's, I think of it kind of as an Ars Poetica, and the last poem I'm going to read is kind of an Ars Poetica, so that they kind of were a nice bookend. Okay. Snow at night. I prefer it even to love. Alone and without ghost, it falls a hard weather. A withdrawing room that revives me to stolen daylight, in which I feel no wish to brush a gleaming finish over the sheen-broken glass I've arranged and rearranged. An apprentice of mosaics who will not be taught, but asked to be left alone with the brittle year so carnivorous of all I'd made. But the snow I love covers my beasts and seas, my ferns and spines worn through and through. I will change your life, it says, to which I say, please. And Blood Lyric. I come to you without wound and in the strength of my life. Heaven cannot touch me, neither can the earth. In this clear field, the stripped birch does not represent me. Thus I give back the respect I once stole. I give back its own life trying to break through the low canopy draped like an abandoned wedding tent. I am without wound, but this is a small slat I speak through and briefly. By the end of these words, strength might be gone, new pain come, old pains returned as elderly selves grown quiet with the knowledge of what did and did not happen. Long live such confidence as I have these 5 minutes now. Long live the primate's human eyes inside of the cage. Long live the surgeon steady enough to examine the bloody heart beating in his hands before the minutes are up and it must be put back inside. So the last, well, it's kind of the last thing I'm going to read, but it's several sections of a long poem I'm working on, or maybe a series of poems, or I don't know what it's going to turn into. We're doing this thing in Lynn Emanuel's workshop right now where we're writing a poem a day that's at least 14 lines. So I kind of got on this pathway and just like ran with it. But the cool thing about writing that much is that I feel like I got to this place where I can just like see anything and make a poem out of it. Which sounds more uplifting than what this poem is, but you'll see. So I saw this news article via Facebook one day, and I just brought in like a little section of it rather than try to explain it myself. So yeah, it's about symphysiotomy, which is this crazy surgical procedure that was done on 1,500 plus women in Ireland without their consent. Over a period of time, I think it was 1941 to 2005. So it was the last one performed was relatively recent. But so this is from the article that I originally saw. The survivors of symphysiotomy submission to the United Nations Committee Against Torture makes for difficult reading. Within the 50-page document, some of the 300 survivors recount their personal experiences of the childbirth operation, which has been described as barbaric and cruel. A symphysiotomy was a procedure carried out on pregnant women before, during, or after birth in the place of a cesarean section. It involved breaking the patient's pelvis and leaving it permanently enlarged. The women, the majority of whom were in their early 20s and having their first child, have suffered chronic pain, incontinence, walking difficulties, sexual problems, and other issues for their entire lives as a result. One survivor described the experience of the chainsaw used to incise the pubic bone and pubiotomy, and even riskier of a related surgery, as like being cut with broken glass. So it looks like this. It's in sections, and there, every once in a while there are lines that are italicized that are taken straight out of the testimony from the treatise that was drawn up for the United Nations. I'm going to try to make it obvious where those parts are, but it's kind of hard to. Yes, I'm just going to read these straight through and hope that they become a full poem one day. Okay. It's just called Symphysiotomy. My husband was a cross man. You're only half a woman, he said, after the hysterectomy. And so far, being a woman has meant, and so far the word archaic is a misnomer. The doctors were gods, absolutely, in their own minds they were. For the god of breaking without cause wears many faces, dozens of hospitals in Ireland, and what gave them the right to split a life into two was the simple standing over, the looking down. The child's doctor would say, "Did you ever hear any mother say anything right?" Mother, the briefly unmythologized, holding a cup of warm water in one hand. Mother, the original loss, the first goodbye. On the operating table, she is surrounded by every kind of ghost. You can have 10 children, all normal, he said. They did it without my permission. And each and every ghost there without her consent, the babies she will never have, the life she will never walk through, the empty spaces that will never offer rest. The way ghosts could walk through walls, the doctor says, you need to go through the pains of childbirth. And this is when he pulls out a saw, like being cut with broken glass, and she thinks she catches a glimpse of some Catholic ghost, one cut straight down from her navel for the symphysiotomy, one straight across for the emergency cesarean, across, and across, and across. And this one is just all italics. It's just a long quote that I line broke. All the baby clothes, the ones my grandmother had bought, we had to throw out. Chris had to make the coffin and bury the baby himself. She was buried under a tree. We had no money. I couldn't walk. Where is she buried? I asked him years later. My back started to fall down. I couldn't balance, I couldn't straighten. It stopped everything. I was in awful pain. And the number of ways the poem wants to say the mother was split open and at the broken places were born the nuclear family. The poem stops to ask itself the implications of her pubic bone being made into metaphor, the way her body falls into the background. She breathes into the empty space, and the poem is wholly differentiated, never even resembled a stem cell, waiting for her calling out in the maternity ward. And the dialectic between wanting and burden always belonged to her. The metaphor always, I'd like them to go through it to see how it felt. That's all I got.